Thank you, Carol, and good evening, everyone, and a really warm welcome to this evening's event. So as Carol says, my name is Tracy Orst, and I'm the CEO Principal of West Thames College, and I'll be your chair this evening. And just a little bit of background from me. So I've been in education for over 25 years, and more than 20 years of that has been in Hounslow, working in education in Hounslow. My passion is fairly obvious. It's education, skills and training. And for us as a college, we're very much a local college, wanting to meet the needs of our local community. And for me, it's really simple what we are trying to do. I want every single student who walks through our doors to have an outstanding experience when they're with us. And I certainly feel lucky to be working in such a diverse borough. And as a college, diversity and inclusion are key strands of what we do. And I have to say, we're really delighted to be hosting tonight, and it's great to have our students in the audience, as well as our local residents. So I'd now like to start by introducing you to our panel for this evening. And I'm going to ask the panel members to introduce themselves along with their areas of responsibility. And I'm going to start with the leader of the council, Councillor Shantanu Raghuwat.
Thank you very much, Tracy. Good evening, everyone. Tracy, thank you very much for hosting us this evening. I believe it's the Association of Colleges Week, I've been told, and you were up at number 10, weren't you?
I was at Downing Street today,
yes.
So yes, that was quite an experience. So this week is Love Our Colleges Week, so we will be posting photos from today just to share the fantastic work that colleges do working with local partners like the local authority to help build the skills of the community and meet those really essential needs. And, you know, it's never been more important than it is now post-COVID to ensure that we actually build back and we work with our local communities, our local residents, to make sure that we are providing those jobs and those skilled opportunities for the future. And that's a really important part of what we all do, I think, here in Hounslow.
Yeah. If I'd known, I would have given you a shopping list for the Prime Minister. So my name is Councillor Shantanu Raghuwat. I'm the leader of the council. I'm a councillor in Heston West Ward. And apart from being leader, my specific responsibilities include finance, external affairs, and the relationship with our wholly owned company, Lambton 360, as well.
Hello, my name is Councillor Ajmer Garewal. I'm Cabinet Member for Safety and Regularity Services. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Councillor Tom Bruce. I'm a councillor in Hounslow South, and I'm a Cabinet Member for Regeneration and Development.
A very good evening to you. My name is Councillor Shivraj Garewal, and I'm a councillor for Heston Central Ward. And my responsibilities are I'm Cabinet Member for Communities and Equalities, Heritage and Culture.
Hello, good evening all. I'm Councillor Lily Bath, and I'm a councillor for the Bedfont ward area, and my responsibilities are education, children, skills and learning. Thank you.
Good evening all. I'm Councillor Samia Chowdhury. I'm councillor from Hounslow Heath Ward and Cabinet Member for Adults, Social Care, Public Health and Transformation.
Hello everyone, I'm Councillor Guy Lambert and I'm the lead member for Recycling, Highways and Health Integration.
Hello, I'm Councillor Salman Shaheen. I'm Cabinet Member for Recreation, Public Spaces and Parking, and I'm Councillor for Isleworth Ward.
And I'm Councillor Catherine Dunn. I'm the Deputy Leader of the Council. I'm Councillor for Sion and Brentford Lock Ward, and my Cabinet responsibilities are climate, environment and transport.
And Councillor Sampson, who is the Cabinet Member for Housing and Homelessness, is going to join us. She's just running a little bit late, but when she arrives at the end, so everyone knows who she is.
thank you very much to our panel. So just a little bit about the structure of the event this evening. And I'd just like to start by saying thank you to everyone who submitted questions in advance of this evening via the council website. Please note, some of these questions will feature this evening, and a response will be provided for all of the questions that were submitted. The responses will be published on the website, and please note this might take a few days for them to be up there. So this evening, I'll ask a mixture of questions. Some of them will be the questions that have been submitted in advance, and some of them will be questions directly from the audience. Please can I ask that you keep your questions brief. Carol already mentioned we've only got 90 minutes, and I think that 90 minutes will go fairly quickly. But just to note, panel members will be around at the end if anyone would like to speak to them or have any follow-up from what's been discussed this evening. And as Carol already mentioned, we've got a couple of people on the floor who will be around with their roving mics, who will bring the mic over to you when asking questions. And please can I just ask that during the course of this event, we're respectful to each other and to the panel. So without further ado, let's get started. And I'm going to start with our first featured question. And this question is from Samina Malik, who is in the audience. So Samina, the mic will be heading your way for you to ask your questions.
Thank you, Tracy. Good evening, Cabinet members. My question today is, why has the council not prioritised space in vacant sites that's under public ownership for increasing new supply of SEND school places, particularly when developers on these vacant sites that are designated for mixed use are proposing only 35% affordable homes below the 50% threshold set by the Mayor of London?
Who would like to take it?
I'm happy to take that, and maybe Lily can help in terms of the SEN school places. It's a very complex situation in terms of trying to provide all the infrastructure, all the buildings that we need in this borough. We have a variety of different guidelines and plans that we need to follow. We're forming our local plan at the moment. Part of that local plan is allocating space to a variety of different needs. It is looking at what is needed across the borough, but is looking at what is realistic in terms of delivery as well across the borough. Where that need is, what we can do with the sites that are available, whether the site is appropriate for particular developments, and that forms, the part of all of the parts of how we allocate those sites. A lot of the responsibility, in fact, the vast majority of the responsibility for now building schools rests with the government. And while we have some role to play in terms of the planning process, actually, what we need from the government is to see much more activity coming forward and saying, these are the things we know you need, and here are the mechanisms with which to do it. Otherwise, what we could do is we could be allocating space for some schools that will never come forward, that will never be built. So we recognise in this borough now where we are is that we've had a huge school expansion programme in the last decade or so. That's been plateauing off. The need, I should say, has been plateauing off, so therefore we're not building as many schools anymore, or as many expansions of those schools anymore. We've also had some schools come forward from the government through the free school process. We know there is a need within SEN, and I'm sure Lily can talk about that in a second. And it is providing that, with new sites, but also within the current provision, in schools at the moment, who have that capacity and that space and units at the moment and that kind of thing. So it isn't we will do this and this will happen. That's why my answer's taken about 2 minutes. It is a complex situation. We recognise the need for that. We try to provide where we can. There is a designated site for that in central Hounslow that there is a planning application on, and we're in the process of, that's in train, and we're working with the developer on that and the local community on that. Again, a complex issue as well, and we need to look at sites across. So there are allocations. Allocations need to be realistic. We need to be able to provide other things as well, including housing and employment, and it's taking all that into account as to why, therefore, we are in the situation that we're in with that. I don't know if Lily wants to talk about the need.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that question. Actually, as you probably already know, there is a problem nationally as well in terms of SEND school places. And I think it's always about getting the balance right. So we want to make sure, as a local authority, that where we are providing a school place for a child with SEND, that it's as local as possible. And that's always a challenge. And I was looking at the figures earlier on today, and I think we've been successful in terms of 90% of the time getting children a place locally where we can. In terms of adding to Councillor Bruce's response, in terms of sites, so what we tend to do is obviously where we can expand within schools, we will do that. And there are a couple of projects going on at the moment where sites within schools are being expanded to increase the number of SEND places. So that's already taking place. So that should make things a lot easier. We've also got, as Councillor Bruce said, got an application coming in from a new school, which if goes through, obviously the time frame for that is not going to be about a year or so, but if that goes through the sort of planning permission, etc., then obviously that will add in terms of provision for providing more places for children with SEND. I mean, one of the other things that the council is very keen to do and is working very closely with schools is to try and improve and expand provision within mainstream schools. So where mainstream schools can provide places for young people with SEND, we want to do that as much as possible. Obviously, not, some children and young people will need specialist provision, and that's absolutely fine. But where that can be provided in mainstream, there is a big focus to try to do that as well. So hopefully, it will require. There are a lot of moving parts. It will require work across the whole council, etc., as well as looking at sites. But I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. And if I could just add to that from the SEND piece, actually, that's a really key strand of what we do here at the college, and we've certainly seen a growth in SEND provision, both students who are in mainstream with additional support needs and students who are within our discrete supported learning provision, as well as students who are undertaking supported internship programmes, with one example being with the local authority as well as other local employers. So, we are certainly seeing the increase at our end coming through and actually offering an increased number of places, recognising that's obviously post-16. Thank you. Okay, I'm now going to come to the audience to take a question from the audience. Gentleman up there with the red T-shirt on.
Hi. So firstly, just want to thank the Cabinet for everything they've been doing over the last year. Appreciate it's extremely difficult financial climate out there, and we're seeing local authorities falling over left, right, and centre. So the fact that Hounslow is on a steady footing, hats off to all you've been doing to sort of steer the ship through this time. So you wanted. Hello. Did you want to ask the question? Just want to ask about rail services. Firstly, sorry, Catherine. You know me. But obviously, we've seen with Crossrail, the Elizabeth line, the success of a really powerful and reliable rail service and the impact that's having to the north of the borough. Obviously, we've seen with SWR in recent years, obviously with rail basically under the control of the Treasury at the moment, we've been seeing services getting cut left, right and centre. On a Sunday, one train an hour at the moment. Off-peak, it's impossible to get from, say, Chiswick to Whitton because they've cancelled the Hounslow Loop. And obviously, I would have thought this would be considered unacceptable for a borough of this size with the ambition that we've got at the moment, and sort of keen to see and hear what the boroughs can do to, you know, really campaign to try and get that quarter of an hour service throughout the day restored for the Hounslow Loop during the week and weekends. And, you know, if the government and SWR don't fancy it, campaign for the Mayor of London to take it over and bring it into London Overground.
Thanks, Stephen. I mean, completely agree with you. We are a borough that requires a better transport service than we're currently getting on that particular line, on the Hounslow Loop. And whilst we're working across the piece to try and improve public transport because of the wider issues around the environment, around public health, and so on. We're trying to reduce the number of car journeys in the borough, and that means more people walking, cycling, and of course using public transport. So it's absolutely key for what we want to achieve. We're supporting various new rail projects, which is very exciting. So thinking about the West London Orbital, Southern Access, rail access to Heathrow, and Brentford's to Southall rail line, all of which will link into other services, in particular the Elizabeth line that's available. But those exciting projects, are not good enough on their own. We need to make sure that we're making the best of the infrastructure that we've got already. And I agree with you completely that restoring that 15-minute service is absolutely essential. So we will keep putting that pressure on SWR. I mean, it does ultimately come down to the government and their funding as well. I like the idea of it being taken over, perhaps, if that's not working. But you've definitely got an ally in that to see that happening in the council.
And if I may add to that, you're absolutely right, and Catherine's absolutely right in what she says. Actually, if you look across West London, the 6 or 7 boroughs that contribute towards what's known as the West London Alliance, that's a powerhouse. That's probably the largest sub-region in London, and it contributes about £75 billion to the Treasury every year. And Catherine's absolutely right. It is really easy to get from Hounslow to central London. It is terrible to get from Hounslow to Whitton or Hounslow to Barnet, for example, and those connectivities don't exist. So the West London Orbital is really key. But I think the real shame here is that the government's negotiated settlement with the Mayor of London and TfL has been halved in terms of capital projects. So some key capital projects, although the West London Orbital is still on track, is really, really difficult because there's half as much money as there should be to be able to fund some of that ambition. So I think in conversations that I have with the Mayor's office, the ambition is there. Unfortunately, the money isn't there, and that's a deliberate ploy by government. And I think it's a real shame with some of the announcements they made on High Speed 2 as well, which will have an impact. So, Catherine's absolutely at the forefront of arguing our case, but there is work going on in the sub-region as well.
And just a kind of a follow-up from me, in terms of the option that you suggested in terms of the Mayor of London and potential opportunities, do we know if that's something that has been previously proposed?
That's a good question. I don't, not in terms of the South West Rail, but I know that the Mayor is very supportive of the West London Orbital, which actually will use a lot of the existing infrastructure, with just the need to provision a couple of new stations. So that is going through the modelling. I had a meeting with Seb Dance, who's the Deputy Commissioner for Transport, a couple of weeks ago, and they're still very, very keen on that. From Heathrow's perspective, they want some certainty on Southern Rail access, as Catherine talked about, because that will unlock the area as well. I think we're probably close to having one scheme that all boroughs agree with. There's always going to be one borough that's an outlier. For once, it's not Hounslow. But, all of these things, when you jigsaw them together, you get an infrastructure piece that talks to West London, when it comes together, actually doing some great stuff for the local economy and local connectivity as well.
Okay, thank you. Next question, I'm going to come to the audience, and I'm going to come to Hanaya Hakim. And I'm delighted that Hanaya is one of our students who's here in the audience tonight and has submitted a question. So over to you, Hanaya.
Thank you, Tracy. So, hello everyone, good evening to the panel. So my question to the panel is, if the council could fund a youth club for young people in the borough, this would allow us to have somewhere outside of the college at weekends or on holidays to actively participate in some engaging activities such as volunteering, skill building workshops, and community projects. This would help young people to contribute meaningfully to their community and enable us develop our skills as well.
Thank you. Who would like to take that one?
Would be me. Yeah, so thank you for asking that question. And actually, it's really lovely to see a lot of young people here today. I think that's lovely to see. So can I just ask you a question, put it to you? Do you use any youth clubs or activities that we currently have in the borough? I just wondered what you used and whether whether you had any sort of opinion on that or not.
So currently I don't use any, but I would like to.
Thank you for that. That's really interesting because I do get asked a lot about youth clubs and could we fund more youth clubs, etc. And of course, yeah, if we had the money, we'd have a lot more. I would like to state, however, that we do have quite a lot of activities in the borough, and we do have youth clubs. And if you go on the council website, you'll see the range of activities that we have, whether they're youth clubs or they're sporting activities or drama or music or craft, whatever you want, it is available. Now, whether that's enough or not is another question, but they do exist in terms of youth activities. I mean, it's very difficult, as you probably have been reading in the news, that councils are in very financial, difficult circumstances at the moment. And, they have very little money to spend on sort of non-statutory services. So, as you can imagine, some of those services do tend to suffer. But having said that, the council does spend money on youth activities, and you will, if you go to the council website, you'll see what is available. They do try and, the little money that we have to spend, we do try and target it so that it reaches to maybe young people that are experiencing difficulties, that might be vulnerable for one reason or another, so that we try and support and help them. So it is targeted as well. One of the things that we are looking at, because I'm quite keen to hear from young people about what they use and currently are using, and how we maybe advertise and reach out to more young people. One of the things that we are doing is, in the councils, we're doing a review of all the youth activities and services that exist, whether they're provided by us or provided by somebody else. And once we get that data and we get that information, we can then look at where the gaps are. And I would sort of encourage young people to feed into to any consultation that we do. We recently agreed our Children and Young People's Plan, which is a vision for children and young people in the borough, and that is an ongoing plan, which means that you can feed into it any time that you want to. So if after this you think, well, I'd like to have asked that question, or I've got ideas, you can go onto the website and you can feed your ideas, and we'd always be happy to hear that. But to answer your question, yes, there are activities. Yeah, we'd love to fund more, but it's always a question of how do you fund them, who's going to provide them, where they're going to be, where will they be, how do you get the site, the land, etc. There's a whole load of questions, but we are, in addition to that, doing a review of some of the services that we offer as well. I hope that helps.
Thank you very much, Hanaya, for your question. And, I think it's, as Councillor Barth said, there's a fundamental importance of youth clubs. I remember when I was a kid going to youth clubs and how much I enjoyed them. But just to broaden our discussion a little bit further away from youth clubs and talk about some of the other things that we are doing for young people in the borough. One thing that we've very, very recently announced is hot off the press. We're teaming up with Brentford Football Club and with the Football Foundation to introduce play zones across the borough. And we've been consulting residents as to where they want to see their play zones. And these are going to be safe, inclusive, accessible sports facilities where young people can come and the community can come together and play football and other sports as well. So we really want to hear from you, A, where you want those facilities, and B, what kind of sports you want to play in those locations. So that's one thing. I mean, another initiative that I've been working on is Grow for the Future, and that's transforming wasteland across the borough into orchards, community gardens and allotments, and pairing them with local education institutions so that young people can come and learn about biodiversity, sustainability, where our food comes from, healthy living, and, like you said, build skills that are going to be important for them in the future.
Thank you. So probably definitely things that we can get involved with and think about following on from this evening, how your voice can be included in some of the work that's already underway. So thank you. Okay, back over to the audience for another question. Okay, lady at the back. Oh, right next to the microphone.
Brilliant.
Perfectly placed.
Good evening to everyone. Nice to see a number of residents here today. I want to know what the council is doing about protecting green belt in the London Borough of Hounslow, especially with the actual application from Brentford Football Club on greenbelt land at the moment, which is causing a real harm to all the residents along Jersey Road and Alderney Avenue.
Sorry. I'll take this. Two issues there. So there's one about a particular planning application and the other about the principle of Greenbelt. I think, talking about Greenbelt, I have to go back to what I was saying on my previous question about the local plan. We're in the process of updating our local plan at the moment. We've gone through a consultation which asked the question about combining all the various volumes of the local plan. And in the next few months, we'll be going into the process of have we got the allocations and have we got the sort of areas correct that people want various developments. Now, when we talk about what people would like and what people think is accurate, you have to take in a lot of different views there. We're obviously talking about the views of residents, absolutely. We're talking about the views of businesses and people who want to build, and I'm talking about businesses who are going to employ people directly in the borough, as well as developers. We're also talking about the views of small businesses that are currently there at the moment. We're talking about the views of interested parties, say, for example, like the Friends of the River Crane as well, who have an interest in the crane that runs through the borough. So putting that all into the mix, thinking about how we might best provide areas in our borough for various things, housing, employment, etc. That's where we come up with our suggestions on what would happen on the Greenbelt. The really significant part of the mix is our employment and housing targets that we're required to meet every year. So it's not as simple as me plucking a number out of the air, or the leader plucking a number out of the air and saying, we want to build 200 houses, and you say, no, please only build 100, and we say, okay, fine. We are required to build a certain number, and it's in the thousands every year. And so over the life of the plan, 15 to 20 years of the plan, it's in the tens of thousands of homes that we're required to build, and also the amount of employment we're required to provide through building shops and residential and commercial and warehousing and all that kind of thing. All of that goes into the mix. If there was plenty of brownfield, empty open brownfield space, obviously we'd go there first. That's where we'd build it all. That's the absolute, obvious place to go. That's where we look first and we say, there it is. That isn't available. We have the targets, we have all these things in the mix, we still got to provide that, because even without the targets morally, I want to provide housing for people because we know we have a housing crisis. I want to provide employment for people because we know that there is a difficulty with employment, not unemployment, but there is underemployment in the country and in our borough. So we have to look at other spaces, and that includes looking at the Greenbelt. Now, I have not come into politics to build loads of flats on loads of green spaces. None of us have, no planners have. That's not what we're about, okay? It's not what I'm about. But it is about balancing those things up. And it is about saying, are there spaces, including what we would term greenbelt, metropolitan open land greenbelt, are there spaces that are underused, poor quality? We will look there first. And it's about getting that balance. In areas where there's greatest need, how can we provide that? So, in a sense, I'm saying, yes, we will be looking at Greenbelt. Previous plans have looked at Greenbelt. Draft plans that we have suggested Greenbelt. It will be something that will come up. It will be no surprise. But the key I want to emphasize is I am absolutely clear that we want to limit that as much as possible. Absolutely. Brownfield first, current developments, underused developments next, then the other space after that, essentially. There's other criteria, but that's essentially where we are. And that's what will happen. Residents have had lots of opportunity to engage, and we've consulted on previous iterations of this. We will continue to have that conversation when we publish the next stage in the summer, and we will continue to listen to people throughout. The key point about the local plan is getting a sound local plan, one that's adopted and approved by the inspector, the planning inspector, at the end of the process, which I hope will be at the end of 2025. Often these things do take a bit more time than that, but I'm very hopeful that that's the point we need to reach. Because if we don't get to that and say, these are the sites we allocate for this, and these are the sites we allocate for that, even if that is on Greenbelt, and lots of you will probably say to me, oh, please don't do that. If we don't get that, then in a sense, and I use this word advisedly perhaps, but it can become a bit more of a free-for-all. The developers can go, well, you haven't got a local plan, so I just want to put something on there. And the inspector might then go, if it comes through planning committee and goes to appeal or whatever, might go, well, they're right, you haven't got a plan. Yeah, off you go. Now, I'm being very simplistic in my terminology there, but I'm trying to describe the situation. Why having that plan is important, why making sure we allocate appropriately, even if it's not exactly 100% what we all would want. Because we all have these, spinning lots of plates, juggling lots of balls. I'm confusing analogies there. It's really important to get that. And I know I spent a long time, but it is a complex thing, and it isn't as easy as saying yes or no. So I want to describe that situation. In terms of the specific development you're talking about, that's a live application at the moment. And the key thing there is that the planning committee, I think it's next week, I think the planning committee will say it. The key thing there is that you make sure your views are shared to the committee. I'm not making the decision. No one here is making the decision. It's the planning committee that will make that decision based on the officer's recommendation, but they say no or yes, or they agree and disagree, depending on the representations that are made. So that's the really important element there. It wouldn't be appropriate for me, I've never done this, I won't do it, make a comment on that while it's in the process. What I will say is I understand, I've had a lot of, I don't know if it's from you or someone, I can't remember, one of your neighbours has sent me quite a bit of information, and I do, and other councils as well, I do understand all of that, I do understand the difficulties, but again, I want to balance that up with the importance of Brentford Football Club to our area. That's not to say they should just be able to do what they want, absolutely, I'll be clear on that, but it is about saying they are an important part, absolutely, publicly we'll say that, an important part of our borough, and we want to try and make sure both are recognised and represented. So I hope that's clear. Sorry, Chair, for waffling on.
Thank you. I'm going to come now to another member of the audience and to John Cooper, who has a question. If we can take the mic over to John, please, just at the front.
How can residents ensure that forum topics are ones which they want to discuss with councillors rather than topics which the London Borough of Hounslow wishes attenders to know about, and ensure much more time is given to the former and much less to the latter, which can be dealt with in other ways to a far larger audience, for example, via Hounslow Matters online and by quarterly printed distribution?
Thank you, John. Who would like to take that? Yep.
Thank you, John. We have met before, and we met the last week, and we did discuss something on the same lines. what I would like to bring to your notice is that we have community development teams which are out and about in the wards or in the borough 3 to 4 times a week. And they are gathering insight on the priorities which are and aspirations and needs of the communities, which are then fed back to the chairs on the planning committee or any other committee, right? And the residents can pre-submit their questions online, as well as they can pre-submit them in the area forums as well and on the web page. And as far as the promotional material to go to the councillors or the officers can go directly as well. You can approach the councillors or anybody in the offices as well, directly. But when it comes to the questions which have to be addressed in the area forums, it is at the discretion of the chair. And the chair makes sure that the questions which are addressed are very important to the community at that very moment. But your suggestions are always welcome, and if there is something very important to be discussed, that can be discussed at that time. And as far as the radical overall consultation and engagement is concerned, we are looking in ways to improve how we can engage with our residents and elderly people and to inform them what is best for them. And in the last meeting, you requested that you wanted a cabinet member to be a champion for the elderly in the borough, and I volunteered to do that. And you also asked that there should be meetings held, and I can confirm to you that I have a discussion with the leader, and we will have 3 meetings in a year. And if there is something else you want to know, you're most welcome to send me an email, and I can help you in whichever way you want. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think Councillor Dunn would like to come in.
Thanks. Yeah, just to, I mean, obviously to add to what Councillor Garrawal has said, thinking about the Brentford and Sion area forum, you know, we've had some really good engagement there, and taking input from the community as to what they would like to see as the topics for area forum meetings. And so we've got one tomorrow evening, which is centred around development, because that's a topic that has come up a lot and that residents have asked for. So they really are able to shape that, and we're exploring potential resident steering groups as well.
Thank you very much. Back to the audience for a question. Gentleman there had his hand up earlier.
Just coming to Councillor Bruce again. Just a quick, it's a question again around Brentford Football Club. They're building an academy on metropolitan open land. 40% of the land is SINC, Site of Interest for Nature Conservation. They're building an academy there along residents' roads. There's going to be a lot of noise and all. Why don't you look at building such academies at Heston School so the community can actually benefit? They're building such open, obstructive indoor pitch tents. A previous planning application, which was for a tennis club who wanted to build a huge dome, was refused. So I'm concerned, where do you draw the line about building such huge developments on MOL SINC land? You know, we've got somebody talking about biodiversity, conservation to nature. We are trying to encourage our children to participate in all of that nature conservation, but here we are on our doorstep trying to destroy MOL SINC land. So why don't we look at seriously integrating academies with local schools? They don't have to be at one Heston school. You could use Heathland gets an academy, Heston School gets an academy. Cranford have partnership with QPR, and they're using their grounds. It's a win-win situation for the schools. We don't know what's going to happen in 5 years' time. My main concern is this is happening. We've got Every application is a 5-year temporary application. What happens there, we don't know. There's no clear plans on what's being done.
So the principle of building on MOL is there. MOL can be built on. You have to demonstrate particular, it has a particular term, special circumstances, I think extremely special circumstances or something like that. You have to be able to demonstrate that, but you can build on it. We have buildings on Metropolitan Open Land and Greenbelt in the borough right now that have been built quite a few years ago. That just exists. So the principle of that is there. In terms of this specific application, I don't know the full details. I mean, you talk about areas being a sink. I don't know whether that means that some of the vast area is a sink or exactly where they're building. My point is, and I don't want to get into a conversation about that, is that the things you're recommending and suggesting is a conversation for you and your neighbours with the football club, but also something for you to bring up at planning committee and you'll represent, whether you're there in person or whether you just written written representation. To be honest, both are equally valid to planning committee for them to be able to make the decision on what you're saying. Why you don't believe it's the right thing it's the right thing to do in that area and what an alternative could be. Now, I don't know this, but I would imagine, because planners would look at this, that they would have looked at alternatives and they would have ruled those out for various reasons. Again, I don't know that, and I don't know what those are, and that's something that will be explored in the planning documents and at planning committee. But often with these things, it is a case of reaching a balance. I appreciate what you're saying. I appreciate what one of your neighbours is saying as well about this, that you're not happy, but it is a case that I would suggest that they've looked elsewhere. I'm sure they would have done, and come to the conclusion that for them, in terms of balance, this is the right place. The last thing I would say, I am in contact with the club, and I did speak to the chair a few weeks ago and talked about this, not you specifically actually, and not your neighbours specifically, but just the general principle of what they're doing. And he said, we're very welcome to have conversations with them. We want to engage with them. He said, we have. I can't tell you whether that's true or not. It's not for me to say whether that's true or not, but that's what I was told, that they had open sessions where people were able to come in and they spoke to people, but they would be happy to continue that conversation. So regardless of the outcome next week, I think those conversations would be useful to continue, to understand what your issues are and how they can work with you, because I'm absolutely certain they don't want to work against you.
The problem is we've got a targeted date which was scheduled for the 9th of May, and then suddenly they brought it to next week. So where does it leave local residents to voice their concerns or to raise issues with the local councils?
In exactly the same place that you are now. You can make representation to the planning committee tonight, tomorrow, next week, at the planning committee, and say those things. So, to be honest, that doesn't really matter. In fact, it gets a decision sooner. You know your concerns. I've seen lots of documents that outline what those concerns are. Those are the things that you need to be representing on. So, I mean, I'm just going to be repeating myself, to be honest now. That's where we are with that specific planning application.
Okay, thank you. And I am going to move on to another question from the audience, and this time it's from another one of our students. So over to Oman Abdullah.
Thank you, Tracy, and good evening, councillors. We are recognising the importance of work experience in getting a job in the future. Hounslow is known for having some high-paying large industries within the borough, but despite this, students cannot find work placements in Hounslow and often need to go out of the area to look for work experience opportunities and sometimes work. This means that students in low-income families can struggle to find the opportunities, and without work experience, it can be difficult to find a good job. How do you plan to make work experience more accessible for students in the local area?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. It's a really important question, and it's interesting because I'm having those conversations with my 2 children at the moment. So I absolutely, totally agree with your sort of concerns and your frustrations. I think it's a real problem. And interestingly, after sort of the COVID pandemic, or sort of during the pandemic, really, I suppose, we did the council did some research into how it had impacted on our communities, and the research showed that it particularly impacted young people in terms of them securing employment, etc. But in terms of your in terms of your concerns about work placements, they are absolutely real, and that is an issue. So one of the things that we wanted to do, following on from, you're absolutely right, we do have some big employers in the borough, but we know there's a bit of a mismatch. A lot of the local residents and young people don't get the opportunities. So one of the things that we did as an administration is to have a priority, a big focus on supporting young people. And we've done it through our flagship program, which is the Youth Support Employment Guarantee. And what we are doing is focusing on working with alliance of providers and trying to ensure that we try and create opportunities for young people to secure placements, whether that's locally or elsewhere. It's early work. We've built a alliance, which is we've built basically a partnership with as many employers or partners that we can. That will include schools as well, and local and national partners. And our mission is to try and strengthen not just advice, information for young people, but opportunities for them. What I would suggest is if you can go on our website, because we do have a section on there on youth support employment guarantees, and have a look at that, and obviously put forward your comments, etc., but have a look at what is available. I mean, the leader and I recently attended an apprenticeship program that we have at the council. It was last week, wasn't it? Yeah. So what we want to do is it was like a job fair where we had local providers who were really showcasing what they do and how they can help residents. What we want to do is do more of those and bigger of those, and maybe focus more on young people as well. So there is a lot happening. I do think sometimes it's difficult to know what is happening, how to navigate through the process. As a parent myself, I totally get it. But we're trying to sort of do the best that we can in terms of making those opportunities available for young people, because I think that's really important, really is, particularly as we have some really big employers in the borough, including the council. So
Thank you. And
Yeah,
Leader of the
absolutely.
Council would like to come in?
Yeah, and you're incredibly lucky because the college is part of the YSEG, so
We are.
you're right at the centre of it. But you know, Councillor Barnes is absolutely right. That's a key thing. But context is quite important. So we know post-pandemic that a lot of the jobs in the borough were what we'd call low-paying jobs. In particular, with Heathrow, that's an incredible benefit. But a lot of the jobs that were associated with that were traditionally low-paying jobs that didn't have the security necessarily that you'd want long-term as a young person. So we're doing a lot of work around that skills building. And although we've got the big employers, actually we're incredibly blessed that we've got a number of smaller employers. In fact, most of our economy is made up of smaller employers. And it's giving them the tools to be able to take on an apprentice or do things like that. We're also part of a creative enterprise zone, so we're quite, one of our growth areas in the borough is film, TV, and we've got lots of companies up and down the Great West Road and into Chiswick that are supporting that as well, working with the college as well. Heathrow is a massive opportunity for us, for people on that side of the borough as well, and it's working with Heathrow about offering good, well-paying jobs. And one of the things that Councillor Dunn is doing as part of her green work on the sort of climate response is actually green jobs for the future. So jobs that pay well, but also benefit our environment as well. So there's a lot of work, as well as the YSEG. It's just about joining that all up together and giving you those opportunities so that you can make informed decisions.
Thank you, and probably music to their ears, considering many of the students in the audience tonight are from the creative industry sector.
There you go.
Okay, I'm going to come to the audience for another question. Okay. Do you want to just raise your hand and someone will be over with the mic? Oh.
Is there a current plan to give homes to those who can afford it? If so, how will it occur?
Sorry, just say that again, please, for me.
Is there a current plan to give homes to those who can afford it? If so, how will it occur?
plan for homes, yeah?
Yeah, for the homeless.
For homeless, yeah. So what is the plan, yeah, for homeless?
Yeah, how do we, right, okay. How do we support homeless people? Various ways. It depends on which route they come through. It's an awkward question. It's not awkward, it's a good question, but it's like there's so many strands to it. It's like trying to narrow it down. Yeah, there's a number of ways that we support homeless people. We have temporary accommodation, we have hostels, we have bed and breakfast, we have, it all depends on the circumstances, have you got a specific, could you narrow it down a bit more? Because I could go on forever.
Yeah, because now, post-COVID-19, most people lose their homes. So I'm wondering, those who can afford in more homes, what do they go to? Do they go to shelters? Are there any shelters that are available for homeless, or what do they do to get supported by, let's say, anything?
Okay, right, no, there is help. Prior to the COVID, there was obviously, a lot of people were out of work, and we put a lot of support in during the COVID period to support people with their rents, with their council tax and various other issues that they may have that they need support with. So that was there, but there were a number of evictions that were carried out throughout that time. But also the government stipulated that evictions couldn't go ahead, and they put a delay on it purely because everything was locked down, as we all know. So, and the council at that time worked with the particular landlord, or the council certainly didn't carry out any evictions during that period, but there were private rented landlords that wanted to, and that's when the government stepped in and put a stop to them being able to do that for that time. But there was a flip side to that also. We had the backlog of the voids, because also we couldn't then get the works, where we had empty properties, we couldn't then get the work completed in time. So we've just worked our way through that now. So we've come through the other side of that, but it was a very, what's the word, a very peculiar time for everybody, the whole world really, and we've learnt an awful lot from that. But going forward, but no, there's always support, financial support. We have that community solutions teams, we have the housing support teams. There's always there, if you know of anyone that is, that's suffering from, or on the potentially being evicted, there's always that support, the housing advice that we have at the council. So they must make that first port of call at the council, so we can then intervene and assist. Does that help? Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor.
Just to add in beyond that, I mean, that's why we're building so many homes in this borough. I know that can be uncomfortable for lots of people, and I do get messages like that, and I see things on various forums, and I have conversations with people. Why are you only building flats? Why do you put flats over here? Why are they 92 stories high? I'm being extreme, obviously, but we try and do, again, it's about that balance. We try and do the best we can for the residents that are living here. The majority of people that go into those homes are living in the borough at the moment. There is huge overcrowding here in the borough, and so we want to build homes for those people. We want to make sure that homeless people are secure and safe and looked after. And while we do get criticism and complaints about that, I believe we have a moral duty to provide that for people. The more homes there are, in fact, the cheaper they are to rent or to buy, it's easier for people to get into. There are many more options and all of those kind of things. So I think I would challenge everybody to look at it from the other side than perhaps they're currently sitting on. People who are struggling and trying to understand, well, what is it that people who live in those areas at the moment actually see a problem with those flats going up? And of course they do. But people who live in those areas where you do see flats going up, look at it from the other side. Look at it from this young man here who's saying, what are we doing? We are providing those homes. We are trying to do the best we can. 1,000 council homes in this administration, 1,000 council homes in the administration before, and 1,000 council homes in the administration before that, plus all the private housing and shared ownership and various types of rented accommodation that there are provided through that. So developers come in, developers are going to make money. Let's make no bones about it. That's what they do. But the end of that is that we have homes for people. Often there are jobs that go with that as well, whether in the construction or as part of the development itself with commercial or commercial as part of that residential. And we also get developer money. We get SIL and S106 money that then we can put back into the economy again. We can put back into further jobs. We can put back into the green spaces. We can build more council homes with that. We can provide for parks, all of those things. That's what we're trying to do. And it's hard because we essentially, at the limit of our HRA money, which is the Housing Revenue Account money, that we can use to build this, we are at the very limit. We can't do any more. And so we look elsewhere and we try and think, what could, a new Labour government do better in the future to provide more for us, to do more for you?
Thank you.
I think it's fair to say that as a councillor, as a ward councillor, any ward councillor would find that the single most heartbreaking issue they can deal with is homelessness and housing. And it's probably one of the most common issues that comes up for us for casework. And I think that's certainly become a factor even more so since the pandemic, even more so since the cost of living crisis. And it is heartbreaking to deal with those cases. And those are the cases where I will get residents phoning me up and saying, and they'll be in tears, and they will say, I'm about to lose my home. I'm about to be evicted by my private landlord. I've got a court summons, a court eviction notice. And what I always say to them is the council will not let you sleep on the streets. And that is absolutely true. And as Sue said, there are many avenues. First of all, there are many avenues that we can pursue, many levers that we can pull to stop people sleeping on the streets. Within 24 hours, we can do that. Even if that means we have to, out of our own purse, pay for people to sleep in a hotel that night. We won't let families and their kids sleep on the streets. That is not going to happen. After that, then it becomes about, as Councillor Bruce said, the social housing system, and that is prioritised based on need, and those with the biggest needs will get seen to first in terms of getting in onto social housing. And because there is a colossal amount of need, that is why, again, as Councillor Bruce said, we are building so many houses. But it is a huge problem in society in general, not just in Hounslow, but it's one that's top of our agenda.
Thank you. And over to Guy.
Thanks. I should have said earlier that I represent Brentford West now. I forgot to say it, so I'm saying it now. Like Salman, every week I get somebody who's in dire problems over housing. They're getting evicted or they've got private rental places that are not adequate. And it's the one thing I lose sleep on. Related to the council. Hounslow have got a very, very good reputation and history of building affordable homes, mostly council homes. And we also have something called Lambton Homes, which goes into the market and buys former private rental properties and puts people that we nominate into them. There's more than 500 of those around the borough now. But the economics of that are very challenging, just as they are building council houses. The rents in Brentford have gone up by sort of 50% over the last few 2 or 3 years, and nobody can afford them. And we can't, quite often we don't, the allowance that the government allow us to pay, or they pay themselves, for people to take private rental is not enough. Everybody knows that. This is not a Hounslow problem particularly. The whole of London is very, very short of rental property of all sorts, and that's why the prices are spiralling, and that's why we're so determined to build lots of new buildings and new homes in Hounslow. Thanks.
Thank you. And back to the audience. Questions?
Chair, can I just advise you've got 30 minutes?
Yeah, thank you.
Hello everyone, good evening. My question is, what the council doing to reduce the pollution, and does they support Heathrow Airport expansion, can do the provide the bike?
Thank you. So it's really around pollution and what we were doing around pollution and support for Heathrow.
Yeah, so I think there was a specific question there about do we support Heathrow Airport expansion? So the Council's long-standing position on this matter is that we do support Heathrow, but that we support a better, not a bigger Heathrow Airport. So we're supportive of Heathrow. We understand the importance of Heathrow to our local economy, and we want them to be a thriving business. We don't support airport expansion. They're aware that that's our position, and that remains our position. But we're very keen to work with Heathrow on, and the leader alluded to this and mentioned this before, Heathrow are in a very good position as an employer and with the other employers that work around the Heathrow campus to move us forward in terms of environmental impacts and look at the green economy and what we can do there, both to bring in the skills that we need as a borough to make the changes to become more environmentally friendly and to skill up our young people and make sure that our young people are getting jobs in those areas. But pollution obviously goes way beyond Heathrow. I mean, pollution from aircraft is only a very small percentage of pollution in the borough. Pollution from road traffic, quite a lot of which is associated with Heathrow Airport, is the biggest source of carbon emissions across the borough, but also noxious emissions that cause problems in terms of human health and when you're walking around breathing them in. And so that's why we've got a real concentration on reducing both harmful emissions from road traffic, but also carbon emissions from all sources across the borough. And so, as I mentioned before, trying to affect changes to public transport, encourage walking and cycling, active travel as it's known. But also, you know, for those people who have to drive, we're looking at moving away from the most polluting vehicles. And so obviously the ULEZ, the ultra low emission zone, now extends across the whole of the borough. And that will have some effect. But we also know that many residents are looking to change their vehicles to electric vehicles if they haven't done already in the near future. And so as a council, we need to be ready for that. At the moment, there isn't the infrastructure there for everyone who might have an electric vehicle to be able to charge those vehicles. And so one of our pledges when we were elected was to install 2,000 additional electric vehicle charging points across the borough. And we are moving forward with that pledge. And just recently, just the other week, it was announced that we had successfully bid for some government funding, which will help us to achieve that. And so we expect to put in 1,000 charging points by the end of this year. So that will all help, along with that accompanying shift towards fewer car journeys in general, that will all help to reducing pollution in the borough.
And in tandem with our efforts to reduce pollution from aircraft and also from vehicles on the roads as well, we are making strides in tackling pollution via mitigating its effects, and that comes through our green spaces. Hounslow is already one of the greenest boroughs in London, a fact of which we are very proud, but we are expanding our green spaces. We are building through our green and blue infrastructure strategy, we are moving towards building a borough that is 45% green in terms of its infrastructure. And over the course of this administration alone, we are planting 20,000 trees, over 20,000 trees, in fact, and we are over halfway there already. And that plays a vital role in terms of tackling the air pollution in our borough.
Thank you for that. And just to say, that's really positive to hear, because green skills are something that we have spent quite a long time at the college looking at, and have started to introduce courses to be able to prepare for green skills with electric vehicle courses and installing electric charging points across both of our sites. So we're very keen to work with you on that one. Question in the audience, yep.
We live next to the football club situation, and we understand that the Mayor of London has said that an alternative site should be sought. And in 2018, there was an alternative site that was actually assessed, and it was recognized that it would be suitable. This is the Western International Market, Southall Lane. So why is that not being looked at now? And we want to see evidence of why, that was rejected, and this is now being, made huge next door to the residents. And there are no houses on this other side. There are no, residents to be affected.
Thank you for that question. I think we've probably already addressed it, but I don't know, Councillor Bruce, whether there's anything else you want to add on top of what you've already added, given that it's a live subject at the moment, going through the process.
Yeah, I mean, I'm only going to be repeating what I said before, so I don't really think that's necessary to waste anyone's time on that. It is, as Tracy said, it's a live planning application. All the information, the questions you've just asked, will be in the application documents, will have been assessed by planners, and it's why they will have made their recommendation. So that's what you need to be looking at, and that's what you need to make a submission against, your representation against, next week to the planning committee, so that they can take the fullest view on the application. What you say against it, and what the applicant says, the football club are saying for it, why that's the most suitable site, why it needs to be in this particular location, etc., etc., etc. All of those things.
Erecting huge buildings on the site. Planning permission hasn't been given yet, but they're erecting huge buildings right next to the neighbours.
So if they're erecting buildings without planning permission, that's to do with planning enforcement. So you need to contact planning enforcement and say...
They have been contacted.
Okay.
And, they're still carrying on with this work.
Okay, so therefore they're in breach. But if that's the case, however, there might be previous planning, because there has been previous planning on that site. Well, there is, because you're shaking your head, but there's stuff there at the moment.
Yeah, but they were different. The planning was different then.
So
it was a different picture.
What's happening now is we're getting into a conversation, and I'll repeat my previous thing, and my previous points, is that it's a live planning application, and you can make these points to the decision makers next week.
Right, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, have we got Claire Obeng in the audience? No? Or Gwen Wild? Gwen, excellent. Over to you, Gwen.
Good evening, Tracy and all the councillors. Some of this question has probably been answered, but it's a little bit broader. What is Hounslow's council housing policy exactly? Does it take into account, when you look at housing, the infrastructure services such as schools, dentists, public transport, etc., that go alongside all your housing policy? For example, Brentford at present has a housing boom, and for those of us who are living here, we're quite concerned that Hounslow will not be able to provide the supportive services on this increase in the population. So when a planning comes in, or you look at housing, do you also take into account everything else that goes with the people need when they come to live in the borough?
I mean, short answer, yes, and a longer answer, it's a sort of two-pronged thing. We look at what's there at the moment, but also I talked about the SIL and S106 contributions that developers make, and if there isn't enough in the area of a particular thing, or nothing at all, the requirement on the developer, and that's what the planners will say, is that in order for this to progress, you need to give a contribution of a few £1,000s, £100,000, sometimes millions of pounds, to the local economy. And then that's allocated by the SIL S106 infrastructure funding agreement. It was done by Cabinet a few weeks ago. We allocated that money out into various projects, £8 million worth of that out into the local community to mitigate those issues that you're talking about. Now, there are various things that criteria about that. S106 is quite tightly controlled against certain things. SIL is much broader. Community infrastructure levy is much broader. There are things that have been issues in the past, like school places, where a lot of that money would have gone into school places. Numbers are plateauing and, in fact, dropping, so that need is not there. So it's why we're not building any more school places. People say, well, I couldn't get into the school, I couldn't get my child into the school I want, is a different thing than are there enough school places. There absolutely are enough school places. In fact, there's probably too many school places. You know, we like a little bit of surplus, and this is a problem across the country and across, in fact, London, particularly at the moment. But more money into other things, looking at how active travel can be achieved, dealing with some of the issues that was raised about pollution and all of those kind of things, as well as the health centres. You know, who went earlier this week? Samia and who went? And Sue went to Chiswick Health Centre. I know it's not Brentford, but it's money into providing actually new housing and a new health centre in Chiswick. And there are other examples of potential developments through our master planning system of how that can happen in Brentford Town Centre and in Hounslow Town Centre and in Feltham Town Centre, and also in our neighbourhoods, our more local areas, like Isleworth or Heston or Cranford or whatever. So it's a bit of both, if that answers the question.
Thank you. And I think Councillor Bath wants to come in.
Thank you, Tracy. Just to add to what Councillor Tom Bruce has said, it was around school places, and Councillor Bruce has touched on it. I do get asked quite a few questions around developments and whether there's enough school places and have we done our numbers, etc. I just want to reassure people that there is a huge amount of work done behind the scenes about projected school places and whether they are enough. And Councillor Bruce is absolutely right. We've actually got a surplus. And we're looking at why, because, you know, many years ago when I first became a councillor, we didn't have enough school places and we were expanding, but it's the opposite now. And so that hopefully that will reassure you. But of course, we look at all the other things around health, etc. But in terms of school places specifically, there is an awful lot of work that takes place to ensure that if there is a proposed development, who's going to be living in there and how many children they might be and what school places they will need.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just adding on from here with the planning applications, because I think all of us have heard a lot about housing and planning tonight. When we're talking about if it's a single application, what we all have seen as cabinet members when the application comes in and gets assessed, and criteria is assessed, everything gets looked at with infrastructure. It's not just school places, not GP surgeries, not what we need to do with the parking, but the planning team does look at each and everything. And with the, especially what we visited yesterday, I was really happy to see our health centre, which will be open soon in Chiswick, and the housing for the key workers for NHS. That's a combined project which London Borough of Hounslow and NHS we've done. And this is something, whenever I get a case where I talk about the planning application, I see that it's not that our team, we're missing something, that we are not looking into school places, we're not looking into parking or building high-rise flats. Again, on housing, each and all, I think a few of the cabinet members have said that we get housing casework, but then I think I should point that out today, that when people are waiting on the housing waiting list, regardless they were evicted, there are people in the borough who are overcrowded, but they have severe health needs as well, and they're waiting for us to build the houses so they can move in. A prime example of one of the casework day before yesterday I've dealt with, the lady needs a house where she can have an access with the wheelchair. So that's an important something which we have to look at when we're building housing as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so endorse everything that everyone said. I think the common conception when we talk about infrastructure is that actually the council has control over all infrastructure, be it school places, which we do, but also health needs as well. And that's actually part of our partnership with the NHS. So part of Councillor Chowdhury's role is actually to influence the NHS to be providing doctor surgery based on the evidence and places for that. Part of it is the housing supply, and that's Tom's job to look at housing supply, but then also for Sue to be talking about some of the needs in terms of homelessness and waiting lists as well. So I didn't want people to leave here thinking that actually all infrastructure is the responsibility of the council. We have a unique role where we can influence partner agencies, but it is very much for them, and the SIL money that we raise from some of these developments goes out to that, to support that as well. So we've just agreed a load of money as part of the budget for parks and open spaces as well. So it's a partnership, and it's not all the responsibility of the council, although we do have a unique influencing role.
Thank you. And Councillor Dunn?
Just to build on that as well, I mean, although the school places, you know, we know that's not a problem at the moment, and that's down to work that has been done, you know, by the council over the years to ensure that we have got enough, and now we're seeing this drop off in the numbers. You know, I will say that actually, in terms of doctors' practices, GP surgeries, there is a problem, and that's not something the council can solve, because if it was just a case of needing to build the buildings, we could make sure that that happens, working in partnership with the NHS and with the obligations put on developers. Sadly, there aren't enough GPs to fill the surgeries once we build them, and that is a national problem. There just aren't the doctors, the numbers of doctors that we need coming through the medical schools, and the government, although it has promised to address that, has not managed to do so so far. So that is a problem everywhere. It's not a Hounslow problem, and sadly it's one that we're not able to solve.
Thank you. And just to come in on the schools place piece, I mean, I sit on the school place planning meeting, so I see the work that goes in terms of the forecasting of numbers and where we are with school places, with actually the excess of school places that we've currently got, which in itself brings its own challenges. So I'm going to draw the meeting to a conclusion, and I just want to say thank you to everyone tonight for your questions and contributions and for your time this evening. And could I just say a big thank you to all members of our panel, and a round of applause please for our panel tonight. And just a reminder that the panel will be around at the end of the evening. And I believe the next event has been scheduled, the date has been set, but the chair is to be confirmed. Is that the case? I'm looking at Carol.
Not yet. We are looking later into the summer, so we will advise everybody, and it will be on the webpage about when our next event will be, and on a lot of our social media.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, and if I could just hand you over to the Leader of the Council for the final comments.
So, thank you all for coming, but I think thank you to you, Tracy. It's a daunting job being chair. You stepped into the breach and you've done a fantastic job. So if I may ask for a round of applause for Tracy as well.
Okay, thank you all very much and have a safe journey home.